Hi, Dan Thies again with week 2 of Link Liberation 3, Building an Audience. This is video number 4, Relationship Building. In this video, we'll talk about what monkeys have to do with social media, the different types of interactions that we have to do in social media, talk about public versus private conversations, and how to engage with different people. We'll talk about some disruptive actions that you can take. These aren't things that you need to really stress about doing right now, but can be very, very useful as you move on with your audience building campaign. And we'll talk about a few different tools that can help you track your influence, although I really hope you don't bog down in worrying about tools right now at the early stages. You could spend your whole life studying human behavior and not really understand everything, but there are some things that are pretty well understood about the way that human beings behave. Funny enough, it also works a lot like the way that monkeys behave. The first important thing that you need to understand is reciprocity. In monkeys, you'll see that where they're picking fleas off each other, and when one monkey does another monkey a favor, the other monkey will feel more obligated to return the favor later. In humans, that means that praise, gifts, and doing people favors, like retweeting them, actually causes them to want to do the same for you. The second thing is that in any group of people, inevitably a hierarchy, a pecking order will form. In monkeys, the associations, which monkeys they hang out with, mean something. And with humans, it's the same way. As people say often, it's not what you know necessarily as much as it is who you know and who you're seen with. The other important aspect of human behavior is the way that familiarity influences us and the way that social proof influences us. Paul Colligan used to have something he called ISYOT, which is, I've seen you out there. But one of our students, Allie Dodds, came up with a better one, which is, I've seen you bloody everywhere. And that's because we participate in so many social media channels and in so many conversations through Link Liberation that people get to know you even if they don't actually know you. Social media works like monkey politics in other ways too. There are cliques, that is, speakers who group together and speak mostly to and about each other. Just like with monkeys, angering one individual might make others angry and cause another group to like you, so their friends might hate you and their enemies might like you. In social media, quite observably, the most dangerous activity that you can get into is engaging in debate with people, particularly people who do not consider you a peer. The debates that you do see on Twitter are almost always either between different cliques or among a group of members of a particular clique themselves. So until you understand the social landscape of who's talking to who and who's friends with who and who you're friends with, it's better to just stay out of that stuff. So in the context of Twitter in particular, there are about 5 different kinds of interactions that we can have with people. Links and statements. So sending out a link to a story is not an interaction with anyone. Sending out a statement like, boy howdy, I could use a cup of coffee, is not an interaction with anyone, although it might be an invitation to your audience to speak back. Retweeting is the simplest kind of interaction, and it's almost always safe to do. Replying to people in a chatty way. So if they say, boy howdy, I could use a cup of coffee, and you say, me too, well, don't just say me too, but that's usually pretty safe. But chatting about stuff that nobody's going to get upset about. Replying to people with praise is usually pretty safe, but also you have to keep in mind that you don't want to be pestering someone by doing it all the time. And if there's someone who is in the outcast, that is, they are not loved by everyone else, you might actually be offending people by praising someone. Replying with a question is usually pretty safe, but don't get into the loaded question, which implies that you're disagreeing or trying to debate. And of course, the question that's going to come back when you try to debate with someone on Twitter is, who the heck are you? Who do you think you are? And do I know you? Remember, when you're interacting with people in social media channels, everyone out there is watching. There are very few private conversations that you can have. And that means when you want to have a private conversation, it's better to take it out of the public sphere. So here's how private communication works on Twitter. If people are following you already, then you can communicate directly with them by direct message. So it's important to know who is and who isn't following you and when that changes if you're trying to talk to people. And Twitter lets you know by email and in the web app on twitter.com who's following you. So early on, you definitely want to be paying attention to who is following you, what your new followers are, because we're going to be working with that. If someone is following you and you want to send them a direct message, it's a good practice and polite to follow them back before you send a direct message. That way you can message each other back and forth. In fact, the practice of following back people who follow you is exactly because it makes that direct messaging possible. Well, that's how it started anyway. So let's talk about how to engage with different people on Twitter. With influencers, it's a good idea to be retweeting when they share a good story. You can retweet them, and you want to do that old style, so you make sure that you have the best possible chance that they're going to see you doing it. When you share a story where they're the author, you could also add by @whoever and stick their Twitter handle on that and add an acknowledgement of them as the author, even if the person who originally tweeted it, if you're retweeting, didn't give them credit. And you can also just reply to tweets with things like praise. So, hey, thanks, my audience will love that. Or questions like, do you think they'll fix that bug in iOS 6? Engaging with speakers is something you're going to be doing a lot of, particularly early on. Now, most speakers are not part of an influential group, and they're not influential themselves. That doesn't mean that they don't want to be. So, with speakers that you find who are sharing good stuff, follow, retweet, and engage them in conversation. If they thank you for retweeting or they respond to your comments or questions that when you talk to them, keep on going. Keep the conversation going. Don't pester them and try and take over their world, but keep talking to them every now and then. If they retweet you, even if they only have a small audience, thank them for doing it. And if they follow you back, send a direct message and say hello. The conversation there is something along the lines of, hey, I noticed you're doing stuff about this topic. And if you ever have anything you'd like me to retweet, let me know. What you're trying to figure out is how you can help each other. With listeners, now most of the time they're not speaking up, but you can actually reach out into that larger audience and try to get them involved. So asking simple questions like, hey, what do you think of this? Or even doing polls and surveys. Gifting is a way that you can cement the bonds of loyalty between you and your audience and make them happy that they followed you. So when you link to cool stuff, cool stories and stuff like that, that's great. But also if there's free stuff or discounts or things that you think they might like that won't cost them a dime to get, it's a great way to share things that are going to make people happy that they're following you. Now, there are speakers and influencers who don't talk back to those who talk to them on Twitter, but I think that's a huge mistake, no matter how big they think they are. When people speak to you on Twitter, as long as they're being polite and not just bombing you with spam, it's very important that you respond in a polite and friendly way. And if they're asking for your help and you can help them easily, then do it. Always try to respect people's privacy, though. So if someone has interacted with you in the past, but they're not a speaker, then don't be just jumping out there bombing and saying, hey, Bob, hey, Betty, or whoever. Don't stalk people, okay? That ain't going to help you on social media. If people do follow you and they don't appear to be speaking or have much of an audience, you can still direct message them and say hello. Say thanks for following, and hey, if there's anything else that you'd like us to talk about with respect to parenting or whatever it might be, just ask. Use your own words, of course. It would be a shame if everyone were saying the same thing to people all the time. So let's talk about some disruptive actions that you can do, things that can sort of help jumpstart or build your audience in leaps and bounds. One thing that you can do, if you've identified some speakers who are friendly in chatting, or even influencers who are friendly in chatting with you, you can invite them to do a live interview on Twitter where you'll use a hashtag, like, for example, SEO chat. You ask questions, they answer, and you both use the hashtag, and other people will start to join in. Now, you can also live tweet events, television shows, all kinds of stuff that's going on, and that's a great way to do it. Whether you're doing an interview or live tweeting or just starting up a Twitter chat, announce the date, the time, and the hashtag to be used, and then do it. Swing for the fences. So if you've got the stars of a show on Twitter, invite them to join in the conversation. And if you've got an influencer or a speaker who is going to do an interview with you, make sure that they understand that they need to also tweet out the date and time and the hashtag when this is going to be taking place. Now, there are some great tools out there, and we'll use them for a few different ways. Who Tweeted Me and Backtweets.com are good tools for figuring out who's retweeting your stuff. Unfortunately, we can expect these tools to die out someday, both of them. But they're also useful for finding out who has shared a link. So if you found a good story, an interesting story, and you didn't find it by someone tweeting it out on Twitter, then you can go to Backtweets and Who Tweeted Me and figure out who might have tweeted it so that you can retweet them. Sprout Social is a really cool tool. It's got a 30-day trial, and they've got a number of different pricing plans that you can use. One of the ones that they might not want you to know about is the one that's underneath the big three boxes on your pricing page, that they also offer a $9 a month plan for people who have up to 10 social profiles, which for most of us is far more than we're ever going to need. Finally, Follower Wonk. And I don't recommend that you go out and buy a bunch of paid tools at this point in time, but Follower Wonk is one that as your audience builds, you're probably going to want to use a tool like this. It's again, it's a paid service. It's not super cheap, and it does though have some really cool analytics that will help you understand the nature of your audience and who's participating and all kinds of stuff like that. But even if you sign up for this one, you're going to want to dig into that later because a lot of this information with a smaller audience is just not actionable. That is to say, the actions that you're going to take, the things that you're going to do on a day in and day out basis, would remain exactly the same no matter what the analytics tell you. Just like rank checking in SEO, keeping track and trying to keep score of your social influence can be distracting a lot more often than it is useful. Okay, up next we'll have video number 5, agitation and natural growth. And this is an important one because there are some things that we're going to do early on in the process of building an audience that you're probably going to taper off or stop doing later.